Folks, we have a truly gripping and tragic tale from the heart of West Virginia today. It's a story of coal mining, disaster, and the enduring spirit of a tight-knit community. And to do that, we're going to take you back to April 28, 1914 in Eccles, West Virginia. Hello, folks. I'm Steve Gilley, along with Rod Mullins, and this is another one of those stories of Appalachia that we love to tell.
Steve, whenever we mention something about a coal mining disaster and things that happen in small, tight-knit communities, it's all up and down through Appalachia. I mean, going into Pennsylvania, all the way down through, even into Tennessee. Some of these things things that have happened involving coal mining and so forth. But this one that took place in 1914, wow. Big event for a town known as Eccles, West Virginia.
Yeah, it sure was, Rod. And I think I've said this before, but if we chose to just do a podcast totally about mining disasters, we would never run out of stories to tell. I mean, seriously, folks, that's how many of those mine disasters that have happened here in Appalachia. This one, though, involves a town called Eccles in Raleigh County, West Virginia, situated about 4 miles from Beckley. And Eccles was home to the Eccles Mine No. 5, a coal mine that played a significant role in the lives of the local residents. Now, the Eccles Mine was owned by the New River Collieries Company, an interest of the Guggenheim family. It was a vital part of the community and the local economy. Now, this mine was situated alongside the Virginia Railway and the Piney Branch of the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway.
The coal that was extracted from this mine was the New River semi-bituminous coking coal of the Pottsville series. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but it's considered to be the same as the famous Pocahontas smokeless coal. It was high in demand during that era. But in the story we're about to tell you, it takes a tragic turn. On that fateful day in 1914, something horrific happened deep within the bowels of the Eccles Mine No. 5.
It was an actual tragedy, and it all started about 2:30 in the afternoon on April 28, 1914, when a series of massive explosions ripped through the mine. Now, this was caused when a miner tried to shorten the distance between his assigned working areas by blowing a hole through a coal barrier. Unfortunately, this shortcut the mine's ventilation, allowing methane gas to accumulate. And then another miner who was trying to see what was going on had one of those old-style helmets that had what on it, Rod?
Carbide?
You got it right, an open-flame carbide light. And that light ignited the gas, setting off a violent explosion. Now, this tragic event claimed the lives of at least 180 men and boys who were working in No. 5, including 5 who were under the age of 14. And, Rod, including a salesman who had chosen that particular day to visit the mine to sell insurance to its workers. A tragic, tragic end for him. And just because that was the day he chose to go down there and sell some insurance.
Wow. I'm kind of flabbergasted just to hear that. I mean, to hear that, that he went to sell insurance and he went to the mine and all this stuff happens. Well, the disaster didn't stop at Eccles Mine No. 5. It connected with Eccles Mine No. 6, operating in another coal seam. And 9 men in No. 6 died from injuries and afterdamp, which is the deadly gas left after a mine explosion. Now, it's important to note that at this time, few coal faces were lit by electricity. Miners used helmets with carbide lamps, which burned calcium carbide to produce flammable acetylene, making the environment even more hazardous. The Eccles Mine disaster was the second worst mining disaster in West Virginia history, only surpassed by the Monongah mining disaster. Now, the scale of this tragedy was immense, and its effects rippled throughout the entire community.
Boy, immense is an understatement. You see, several loaded mine cars were thrown into the hoisting shaft by the blast, making it difficult to clear the way to access the mine. It took 4 days, folks, to reach the first casualty, and a massive recovery effort was required. A temporary morgue had to be set up to deal with body identification, and there was a frantic attempt to locate enough coffins, as you could imagine. Government mine officials were joined by local volunteers, and even Governor Henry Hatfield traveled underground with some of the exploration parties. The tragedy had shaken the entire region, and as you can imagine, Rod, the pain was immeasurable.
Well, Steve, the number of casualties is still a subject of some debate. The National Coal Heritage Trail published a death toll of 180, but the cemetery monument lists 183 victims, and the county coroner's records lists 186. Somewhere around around that number, 3 is the magic number, either 3 more or 6 more than what there should be. Well, in the aftermath, the Workmen's Compensation Law of West Virginia, which had taken effect in October of 1913, meant that there was no appeal to charity on behalf of the families. So for short, they didn't get a say in anything. Workmen's Comp provided minimal support, offering $20 a month for widows and a supplement of $5 for each child.
Wow. Well, the disaster did, though, have a significant impact on the unionization efforts in the West Virginia coal fields. This tragic event shed light on the safety issues in the mining industry and paved the way for future improvement in workers' conditions. Additionally, it helped to ban the use of flammable carbide acetylene lamps in U.S. coal mines. A similar disaster, the 1932 Maniqua coal mine disaster in Illinois, played a role in ending the legal use of these lamps. But this wasn't the last incident at this mine, and Rod, why don't you tell them about that?
Okay. Well, Steve, on March 8th, 1926, another explosion rocked the mines of Eccles, which were then operated by a subsidiary of the Stonega Coal Company. Steve, are we talking the same Stonega that's in Wise County?
Stonega Coke and Coal, yes, that's the one.
Wow. Well, the time was around 6:55 p.m. An ordinary evening turned into a horrifying nightmare when a cutting machine operator in Eccles Mine No. 5 failed to test the face for methane gas. As he worked, an electric arc ignited the gas, triggering a massive explosion. And to make matters worse, fine coal particles were present in the air due to a failure to rock dust the mines. These particles would go on to contribute significantly to the explosion, making it even more devastating. And the way that happened, Steve, from the way I've been told, it's just all this coal dust, it's so fine, and then it's almost like, I guess, gasoline, like when the fumes and everything off of gas, once it hits the trail, it lights up everything in between, and it's combustible, and that's exactly what it did.
Well, just think of all the energy in that coal dust, even as small as it was.
Yeah.
Well, folks, as in the earlier disaster in Eccles, both interconnected mines were impacted. 35 workers in number 6 were fortunate enough to be rescued, but in number 5, the wreckage hindered progress. The following evening, rescuers discovered a chalked sign, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness, guiding them to a particular section. R.M. Lambie, the state's chief mine inspector, led the effort to save those trapped miners. He, too, was not spared from the perils of the mines and ended up hospitalized after collapsing from exposure to afterdamp. About 9:30 p.m. on March 9th, rescuers finally reached 10 men who had managed to save themselves by barricading. It's a testament to human resilience and the unwavering spirit of those who toiled in the dangerous world of coal mining.
Steve, now just remind me, I guess, for the sake of things, afterdamp, that's sort of like, isn't it like coating your lungs almost? It's like almost having pneumonia, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Well, the Eccles Mine No. 5 did resume operations after the disaster, but closed down in 1928. The coal seam that the mine had exploited continued to be extracted for many decades afterward from other shafts as a reminder of the resilience of the mining industry. But to this day, the Eccles Disaster Memorial stands as a testament to the victims of the explosions. Their memories live on, and their sacrifice serves as a stark reminder of the perils faced by those who worked in the mines.
And the UMWA played a crucial role in bringing attention to safety issues in the West Virginia mining industry. In fact, this is sort of a precursor to everything that happened later on with the West Virginia mine wars. This was right about the same time that Paint Creek and Cabin Creek had the strike, right in the same area. As we said earlier, at least the first one, was the second worst mining disaster in the state of West Virginia.
Wow. Well, Steve, the UMWA's efforts helped ban these headlamps in West Virginia as they were suspected to be the cause of the Eccles explosion and, later on a second mine explosion in Illinois. And I've got a couple of them. It's something that my mom has held on to, that she'd held on to, and she, pretty much told me a long time ago, don't get rid of these. If you do, I'll come back and haunt you. Well, I've got a couple of them, and they're unique to look at, and you think to yourself, how in the world could anybody get proper light out of these things? I mean, it was just such a small little, wick, almost like a wick in there and stuff. And the flame was out, like we said, like an acetylene torch almost. How in the world did you see with that? I mean, you're talking about being in the dark, down so far underground, you can't hardly see anything, probably barely able to see the hand in front of you. It's just incredible that, something like that, you'd think it couldn't be that bad, but it was. It ended up, costing a whole lot of lives, and a lot of things happened with it. But I think this is funny, and I'm not meaning this in a bad way, how Eccles got its name. I did not know this until we started talking about it.
Yeah, it got its name from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, which
Wow.
I guess people do that, but
Right.
that's an interesting thing. I would assume that some coal mine operator had a bit of a religious bent, and that's what he named that coal camp, as Eccles, after Ecclesiastes. You look at other coal camps around here, like Pardee, Dunbar.
Right.
Dunbar is named after a town in Scotland. You also have, what are some of the other ones, Rod? We've got Calvin, which
What
is
about
named,
Osaka? But we have people call it Osaki.
obviously named after a city in Japan. Exeter.
Exeter, which is supposed to be Exeter.
Exeter from England. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then we go and you've got other names. Dant. Dant's another one of those out of that. And, I've asked a lot of people, too, where does it come from? But I've always heard that it came from Dante's Inferno. That's from the name of it. That's how it got its name. But now I could be wrong on it, but that's what I've heard people say. It came from somebody that wrote books, and their name was Dante. And I said, oh, you mean Dante, like in Dante's Inferno? Yeah, that sounds good enough. So that's what.
well, I mean, it's spelled the same way. Dante, D-A-N-T-E.
Spelled the same way.
Or I remember when I was first working in radio in Norton. And at that time, if the union had called meetings for a strike, they would have announcements on the radio, like Union Local so-and-so number is going to have a meeting. And they had one in Dante. And I said, Dante, because I didn't know. I hadn't been over that way. And the manager comes in and goes, no, Steve, it has to be Dante. You have to pronounce it correctly.
Well, now, I could also say to him, too, if he were still here with us, I could say, well, there's nothing wrong with calling it Dant, because there are people that's been able to say that for years. I can remember talking about, since we talk sometimes about football prognostication, I can remember a famous football prognosticator in one of the local newspapers. Was his name Amos Hoople? And Dant would always take on Slant. And there is a real place called Slant.
Yeah.
So that, it's just funny things like that. People would go. And Dan had a high school at one time. You know that?
Yes, I did. It's been a long time ago. Yeah, they did.
Had a hospital. Yeah. Had a hospital. Had a high school. Oh gosh, the commissary. That was the store and everything that you could go to for Clinchfield. Oh my gosh, it was just incredible then. And little company town. That's what it was. And much like some of these other little towns, even all through West Virginia and down through southwest Virginia, even into eastern Kentucky, all of these little communities had unique little names.
Yes, they did indeed. But the one we're talking about is Eccles. And folks, that's the story of the Eccles Mine explosions. Another one of those stories of Appalachia we love to tell. Thanks for listening. Now be sure to subscribe to the Stories Podcast on your favorite podcast app, and join us over on TikTok at Stories of Appalachia and Instagram at Story Appalachia for video stories of this place we call home. Till next we meet, y'all take care. So long, everybody.